Good morning. I'd like to call the Door County Board of Supervisors to order on Thursday, September 26th at approximately 9 a.m. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
You broke it. She wanted a new system anyways.
Oh, gotta go home. Read them off.
Reboot.
We're off and running. That's okay, the Packers don't play till 7.
You were on a roll today.
I do a business.
What else you got?
Wait, don't we have some karaoke folks from the meeting the other day?
This is intentional, probably.
This is. We've been for
She's trying
Oh,
to
is there?
block the time. Yes.
You could do it verbally.
She's trying to get the timing off for the meeting. She's
Yeah.
throwing us off.
Yeah.
She's trying to affect the
Oh,
timing of the meeting.
affect the,
Yes.
Oh, she's got the bet?
You want me to take notes
Yeah.
or anything?
I think she wants a new system we looked at yesterday, or Tuesday.
Well, she's got a bet on the time, how long the meeting's gonna last, and she's trying to make it.
It's anything like my car. The minute I
That
start
I know
looking at
too.
other cars, my car starts acting up, so.
Dan Osted,
Here,
Helen Bacon. Present. Bob Boltman,
Present.
Vinnie Chomo. Present. David Engelbert,
Present.
Roy Engelbert,
present.
David Inigo,
Here, present.
Ken Fisher,
Present.
Joel Gunlickson.
Here.
Randy Halstead.
Here.
John Cook,
Here.
Susan Cohout. Excused. David Leno,
Here.
Megan Lundahl,
Present.
John Ninus,
Here.
Nissa Norton. Here. Nancy Robillard. Present. Richard Verley,
Here.
Laura Vlies Wadachek,
Here.
Linda Waite. Here. And District 13 is vacant.
Thank you. Presentation of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution 2019-59, appointment to fill the vacancy in Supervisor District 13.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, we adopt resolution number 2019-59 and unanimously appoint Alexis Heim Peter as the District 13 County Board Supervisor.
I'll second.
Just for a little background, we did have 4 individuals that applied to volunteer for this particular position. 3 of them were interviewed. Ken and I interviewed them, and we selected Alexis after the interview. So we'd like to welcome her. I guess by voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Alexis?
I, Alexis Heim Peter,
Who have been elected, raise your right hand, I'm sorry. Who've been elected to the office of County Board Supervisor, District 13,
who have been appointed to the County Board Supervisor District 13
in and for the County of Door,
and in for the County of Door
in said county,
in said county,
but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof,
but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Welcome.
Thank you.
When you put your purse on that, you're bowing to it.
Correspondence. You have the unassigned fund balance packet. Other information. Any questions on the fund balance or any of the correspondence? Public comment. Does anybody in the audience care to make a public comment this morning?
Good morning, Don Fricks, 8305 Quarter Line Road, Fish Creek. I first only came to listen, but I got a warm welcome from the coffee room, so I jotted down a few notes on the back of the envelope here. A little bit tongue-in-cheek for those of you that might not think I have a sense of humor. I just want to say that no supervisors requested follow-up from my comment from last month to listen to audio Representative Kitchen's comments regarding nonpartisan redistricting, so there you go. My main point I came up with here is, and I thought about this prior to seeing today's agenda with the Door County Economic Development Corporation here. I'm really happy with the individuals at that organization, but I'm questioning the county's involvement in that organization, which is essentially a corporate lobbying group. That's it. There's no labor represented there. So that's one of the things I want to go, and we seem to continue to refuse to acknowledge contributions of the working people. And as far as a corporate lobbying group, we're looking at Federal Communication Commission money of $166 million coming to expand rural broadband, but we have no regulation over the broadband providers that public money coming from your phone bill and my phone bill is going to subsidize private corporations. Housing. We're ignoring labor and wages. Wage growth in Wisconsin is 1/2 the national average right now. Teachers can't be found. And we're seeing corporations giving money to local schools to provide job skills. But there's a big difference between job skills, which are needed, and a general education, which is needed even more. So I'd like the county to consider taking over their revolving loan fund, and until labor is involved and a public-private partnership like the county has with this organization now, until we can have access to open records for all their meetings, the same as you do with government here, we should not be giving them a dime of taxpayer money. Housing, when your workers aren't getting enough money to afford housing, we have a housing problem. And nothing's being done to solve it. So that, and public education, the same. Teachers, broadband, housing, and then I'm just, reading skills just came out last week from the state Department of Education. Reading skills in our public schools are at 47% of what's expected for any grade level, and for for-profit and voucher schools, it's even lower. It's 27%, and we're still subsidizing those public schools with our tax money. So this organization here, the Door County government, our corporation, needs to be looking to these needs and not capitulating and enabling corporate profits over the public interest. So that's my comment today. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Anybody else with public comment? Is there any supervisor response? Approval of the minutes of August 27th, 2019, regular meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second. I'd like to actually make a comment
Sure.
on
Me?
What page?
page 5. The topic was supervisor compensation and reimbursement. It said the last paragraph says discussion followed. Many supervisors expressed concerns regarding moving forward without a history of expenses being present. I just, reading through this, I don't recall many supervisors expressing that concern. I do recall there was a concern or a few or a couple concerns. So I would make a motion to amend that it read that concerns were raised regarding moving forward without a history of expenses being present.
Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried, okay. Anything else? So all in favor of the amended minutes, signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Pending business. First resolution is 2019-60. Alexis?
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-60, approval of Wisconsin Coastal Management Program grant for the Dunes Lake Restoration Phase 2.
Is there a second?
Second?
Mr. Fisher?
I was not at the meeting, Mr. Chairman. You'd have to go to Mr. Ninus. He chaired it in my absence.
Mr. Ninus?
Well, we've been offered a grant, and I can't see any reason why I wouldn't accept it. Erin is back here, she'll explain it better.
Okay. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, everybody. So we have, is this on?
Yep, making noise.
Hello? There we go. So the first resolution we have today is approval of a Coastal Zone Management Program grant in the amount of $100,000. This is for our Dunes Lake project, a very significant grant amount that helps us and the project partners move even closer to having full funding of that project.
Any questions? Are we working? We're not working, okay. So we're going to vote. How we can do this? Call it? We're going to do voice vote, roll call vote, I'm sorry, since we're involving money. So when you're called, if you're in favor of it, please say aye. Or opposed, nay.
Supervisor Bacon?
Aye.
Supervisor Boltman?
Aye.
Supervisor Chomo?
Aye.
Supervisor David Engelbert?
Aye.
Supervisor Roy Engelbert?
Aye.
Supervisor Enigal?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Gunlickson?
Aye.
Supervisor Halsted?
Aye.
Supervisor Cook?
Aye.
Supervisor Lino?
Aye.
Supervisor Lundell?
Aye.
Supervisor Ninus?
Here, aye.
Supervisor Norton?
Aye.
Supervisor Robillard?
Aye.
Supervisor Verley?
Aye.
Supervisor Blease Wadachek?
Aye.
Supervisor Waite?
Aye.
Supervisor Heim Peter?
Aye.
You want to ask me?
Supervisor Austin?
Aye.
Sorry.
You're
I
forgettable.
gotta go, I gotta circle back around.
That has passed on a vote of 20 yes,
He's been fast.
1 excused.
That's for me.
Resolution 2019-61. John?
I'll move for approval of Resolution 2019-61.
Second.
Erin is back here yet, she can explain it to you.
This resolution starts on page 9 in your packet. It's to accept $139,000 in sum from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, Sustain Our Great Lakes program. The project is for invasive species control, primarily in areas that had treatments before, coming in again and following up to make sure we maintain those same levels of invasive species control that we had for Phragmites and hybrid cattails. The funding will be used to hire a crew lead and 2 technicians on a temporary basis to do that work, and also subawards to project partners so that they can do some invasive species control on their lands as well. We're working with the Land Trust, the Nature Conservancy, and University of Wisconsin Green Bay.
Great. Questions, comments? Vinnie?
I have a comment to say thank you to the Soil and Water Conservation Department, because I know these grants are competitive and they do a really great job applying for them and receiving them, so thank you.
Anybody else? If not, since it involves money, we will do a roll call vote.
Supervisor Boltman?
Aye.
Supervisor Chomo?
Aye.
Supervisor David Engelbert?
Aye.
Supervisor Roy Engelbert?
Aye.
Supervisor Enigal?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Gunlickson?
Aye.
Supervisor Halsted?
Aye.
Supervisor Cook?
Aye.
Supervisor Lino?
Aye.
Supervisor Lundell.
Aye.
Supervisor Ninus.
Aye.
Supervisor Norton.
Aye.
Supervisor Robillard.
Aye.
Supervisor Heim Peter.
Aye.
Supervisor Verley.
Aye.
Supervisor Vlies-Wadachek.
Aye.
Supervisor Waite.
Aye.
Supervisor Osted.
Aye.
Supervisor Bacon.
Aye.
That is passed on the vote of 20 yes, 1 excused. Resolution 2019-62, non-commercial hangar site lease agreement, number 22 Jim Nelson, number 25 Mike Mahag. John?
I move for approval of Resolution 2019-62.
I'll second that.
This is your standard lease agreement for the hangars at the airport. The reason it's here, it's because it's a 10-year term, and anything over 3 years has to be here. But otherwise, it's just your normal lease agreement that we have.
Okay. Bob?
I have a question, just maybe helping to educate those of us who haven't been on this committee and are relatively new. When I look at the agreement, am I seeing that the rent is $264 a month? Is that?
Is that what it says on your computer?
Yeah, I mean, it's at
That's what it is.
0.196 cents per square foot per year. So I'm just wondering, so
Per year.
Per year. That's not
So-
per month, per year.
so $264 a year. And I'm just curious in the sense of like, I don't know if we're, if that's kind of standard around the state, and if there's other counties that rent for, it seems really cheap to me, I guess that's what I'm getting at. So if it's an area, you know, where there were, someone that is able to afford an airplane, $264 a month seems really cheap. And then I wonder too, do they pay electricity on top of that, or like, does that $264 include everything that, I know we plow and we mow.
I can, oh, John. Okay.
Well, we have done, looked at other places. This is what the standard is around in the state. You know what I mean? In order to keep the airport going, they need all we're doing is renting the land. We're not renting the building. They own the building. And this is what's standard around the state. We've gone over this many times, and this is where we come down at.
They pay taxes on that.
Thank you.
Biz?
I served on that committee, I'm not on it now, but I served on that committee in the past for several terms, and we've never been on the low end, we've never been the high, we're kind of always been in the middle. So I think it's probably fair right where we're at.
Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, we'll do a roll call vote.
Supervisor Chomo.
Aye.
Supervisor David Engelbert.
Aye.
Supervisor Roy Engelbert.
Aye.
Supervisor Inigo.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Gunlickson.
Aye.
Supervisor Halsted.
Aye.
Supervisor Cook.
Aye.
Supervisor Leno.
Aye.
Supervisor Lundell.
Aye.
Supervisor Ninus.
Aye.
Supervisor Norton.
Aye.
Supervisor Robillard.
Aye.
Supervisor Heim Peter.
Aye.
Supervisor Verley.
Aye.
Supervisor Vlies-Wadachek.
Aye.
Supervisor Waite.
Aye.
Supervisor Osted.
Aye.
Supervisor Bacon.
Aye.
Supervisor Boltman.
Aye.
That is passed on a vote of 20 yes, 1 excused. Resolution 2019-63, intergovernmental agreement, affordable and attainable housing. Do we have a motion?
Also move.
I'll second.
Then Grant, right. Do the background.
Yeah, and Mariah's here too. So, starting on page 23 of your packet and running through page 30 is the resolution itself, the intergovernmental agreement, and then perhaps of most important from an explanatory standpoint is the informational memo that Mariah prepared and Mariah and I signed. But long story short, this has gone through a number of committees, so I know a number of you have heard about this. There are 5 parcels of property that the county assumed ownership of through the in-rem tax foreclosure process. They are situated within the city of Sturgeon Bay, and they are shown on the map that appears on page 30. These vacant parcels are, I wouldn't say ideally, but are certainly appropriate for the development of affordable and attainable housing. That is a goal that serves a public purpose, so the county is certainly well within its purview to make use of these parcels in that manner. In a nutshell, what is being proposed is that the county convey these 5 parcels to the city of Sturgeon Bay without any, without cost. The most significant provision being that these parcels be used in perpetuity for affordable and attainable housing. That will be ensured through restrictions placed in the chain of title. And that the agreement itself will be administered by the county and the city. And I think I would defer to Mariah in terms of what the city plans to do with the 5 parcels above and beyond, use them for the purposes of affordable and attainable housing. A question that did arise is why are we transferring or conveying the property to the city? It's simply because the land itself is within the city limits, and I think when we're dealing with an incorporated entity like the city or one of the 2 villages, when this circumstance arises, it is best that the incorporated areas are in charge of and have ownership of the property and can cut the best deal they can make with whoever wants to develop the affordable and attainable housing. I think our vision is if there is a parcel or parcels situated within the boundary of the towns, we would afford the towns the ability to do that if they wanted to, but the county may be more uniquely situated to be able to manage that property in the unincorporated areas of the county. So,
Mariah, do you want to add?
Sure. Mariah Good, Director of Door County Land Use Services, and I'm also on the board of the Door County Housing Partnership. I believe there was a sheet in your packet about that as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I obviously can't speak on behalf of the city, but I can tell you that we've been to the City Finance Committee and the City Council for just a preliminary review of the concept, and they were very much in favor. The thought is with the 2 interior parcels that are a little bit more oddly shaped on that cul-de-sac, that we would the housing partnership would partner with Habitat for Humanity, which was also interested in the parcels, and they would be the developer for those, but the housing partnership would retain ownership of that land so that those parcels would be available for workforce housing affordably in perpetuity. The 3 side-by-side parcels that butt up against properties along Egg Harbor Road, we've been in discussion with city staff about the possibility of rezoning those to allow for townhomes rather than just single-family homes. And the development partner potentially for those lots would be NeighborWorks Green Bay, which is a nonprofit housing developer in the city of Green Bay. But I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about process. We've had a lot of meetings so far. I think I outlined the most significant ones in that memo as far as kind of which committees we've gone to along the way as well.
Benny?
I think it's a really wonderful idea, and I haven't experienced like reading through how this would work before now. So is this resolution saying that this would be done for just those 5 properties or for any properties in the city that the county attains? Because I don't see in there where it says specifically those 5.
Just those 5.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that, speaking from the finance and the city council, that there has been no opposition to this idea, that everyone is on board, council members and staff. So we really like the opportunity to collaborate like this. I think this is really could be very exciting in the future for helping out.
Anybody? Megan?
On lots 11, 12, and 13, if this was to be rezoned for townhomes, approximately how many units would we be looking at?
Marty said that the zoning code, if it was rezoned, would allow for up to 8. We're thinking probably maybe more like 6, but that's to be determined. No, total between the 3. So the 2, all 5 right now are zoned to, see, this is the city code. I think there are 2. One of them, the smaller one, I think it's lot 32. That one only allows for a single-family home right now. Lots 33, 11, 12, and 13 all already allow for duplexes. So right now, between the 5 lots, you could theoretically already have 9 housing units, and our thought was if we did, 6 or 8 townhomes on those outer 3 and then single family probably on the interior 2, that it would be about the same density. It would just be a different construction model.
If I could make one more comment, and sorry, I forgot about this, but the intergovernmental agreement is written in such a way as to be goal-oriented, not prescriptive, and we shouldn't be surprised if, for instance, there are 3 units on a lot, that maybe one of the units would be sold at market rate to help the developer fund the other 2 units that would be sold as affordable or attainable housing. That's sort of the way these projects work. Ideally, all of the units would be for affordable and attainable housing, but that may not be economically feasible, and we want to let the developers who are experienced with this make the decisions as to how to go forward with this in the best possible manner.
Ken?
Thank you. I have a question on it. It's a great idea. I'm all for it. Affordable and attainable housing is different from low-income assisted housing or living, correct?
Yes.
This is a different situation we're talking about. It's not low-income housing, correct?
There's all sorts of different terms. So Habitat for Humanity, if that ends up being the partner for those 2 interior lots, they actually do deal with people that are lower income housing, and the folks that, in order to qualify for a Habitat home, you actually have to be turned down by a bank, and you have to have, for a mortgage, and you have to have an income level that I believe is at 60% or lower of the area's median income. So Habitat homes are technically are low income. The housing trust model, we're actually going to do income levels by household size based on what the U.S. Department of Health and Human, or sorry, not Health and Human, Housing and Urban Development uses. So we're going up to about $110,000 of income for a family of 4, just to give you kind of a ballpark idea of the income ranges that we're looking at. It doesn't mean that somebody lower might not end up purchasing one of the units that we'd be partnering hopefully with NeighborWorks on, but it's a much wider range of incomes that the Housing Trust is looking at. And Grant's correct that, we're just providing the Housing Trust information because that seems to be the likely partner at this point, and that seems to be who the city is saying that they're going to give the lots to, but he's correct that technically there could be some other entity that would arise that would do it instead.
Helen?
I was just going to say, too, about Habitat for Humanity. The city they're building a house now. They have a lot that they have bought, and the city has given them for next year, and this would give them lots. They usually build 1 house a year, so they would have several years of housing that they could purchase. Lots are pretty scarce in the city of Sturgeon Bay, so this gives us the opportunity to allow Habitat to continue to build homes, and that also Habitat now is able to build homes that are looking a little bit more like the neighborhood, so they can have an attached garage, they can have a basement, so they will blend in a little bit better into the neighborhood than the little cookie cutter boxes that they have built in the past, which is a good thing.
And if I could add to that, the Housing Partnership has the outline of a memorandum of understanding with Habitat for these 2 lots, and Habitat's excited about the potential partnership because the cost of the land is being pulled out of the equation for them, so that's going to help them with developing these 2 lots. And they're also, I think, excited that in the long run, after the first Habitat family moves out, that those homes will still be lived in by year-round workforce residents.
Laura?
So ask, how long has the lots been vacant and not undeveloped?
How long have they been vacant?
Yeah, approximately.
Well,
They've never had any.
I don't think they've ever been
improvements
developed.
on them. And if memory serves, this is the 2nd time that some of these lots have been through the in-rem process. And that's an important segue into the fiscal aspects of it. Certainly, affordable and attainable housing is a public purpose in and of itself, but from an enlightened self-interest standpoint, if the county can do something that will allow these lots to be developed in the not-too-distant future, the tax revenue we're going to gain from it with a house and a garage is much greater than the lot sitting empty. And one final thing, if I may, if NeighborWorks of Green Bay gets involved, they have some really neat projects in downtown Green Bay. If you're familiar with where they add a coffee shop, there is a row of what I would characterize as townhouses, actually 2 of them, if you have a chance to be in Green Bay and drive by those. They really are neat-looking developments. I'm not saying that's exactly what's going to happen here, but it's potentially what could happen, so.
Bob?
Just a couple questions about the Housing Trust, again, just trying to learn more. Is the Housing Trust 501c3?
Yes.
It says nonprofit, I was wondering. And so does the Housing Trust act as its own fiscal agent, or does it have a fiscal agent? It's a different organization, like the Community Foundation or something like that? Or
Right now, we're our own
your
fiscal
own
agent.
fiscal agent?
but-
And then is NeighborWorks a Housing Trust? Is that a?
No, they're a nonprofit. So NeighborWorks in Green Bay works a little bit differently. Mostly what they're trying to do is reinvigorate neighborhoods, and they pick up distressed properties, kind of through a similar process from the city, and then they build, owner-occupied homes in those neighborhoods in order to try and lift up neighborhoods. We've been meeting, various of us on different committees and groups have been meeting with them off and on for a couple of years, and Grant's right, they do a lot of really neat and cute construction, but in talking to them, they said, oh gosh, if we're going to build anything like this in Door County, you have to have a housing trust as part of it because it's going to get snapped up for, transient or second family, single or second home ownership and things like that. So but they do similar things.
So one more question then that kind of leads to that. As far as just that, like managing this property in perpetuity, will that be the city's responsibility or the trust's responsibility? Who will have that legal obligation to, and just the work to make sure that it stays?
Primarily the trust. The city and the county would end up stepping in if somehow the trust went kaput or failed to live up to our obligations. But the way a housing trust works, the best analogy that I can think of that has been able to make it clear to people is, think of it like a condominium. So the housing trust owns the land, and then there's an owner-occupied home on it, and that person buys that home, they live in it, they get equity, although the equity's capped eventually. They get equity from it, they can use the yard and everything else. It's just that the housing trust owns the land, and so we can control when it's to be sold, who can actually qualify to purchase it. But they still have to go out and get a conventional mortgage and financing.
Thank you.
I just have one other thing that, in talking to the in talking to NeighborWorks, I asked them, do they bring in their own contractors? And they said no, that they work only with local contractors, so it would also be jobs locally for people in building these homes.
Yeah, they do have their own construction crews in Green Bay, but they don't have the capacity right now to do anything up here. So they've said as much as possible, if they can find local people to do the construction, that's what they would prefer to do, because obviously it'd be easier than having people drive back and forth from Green Bay as well.
Nissa.
So as someone who struggled to buy their first home and is now a landlord, and is also friends with the people who are currently getting the Habitat house, the one that's being built now, I think this is awesome. I think we should move on passing it, and we should go to a vote. No one else wants to talk.
Anybody else? So we will go to a voice vote again. I'm sorry, roll call voice vote, yes. Too much technology for that.
Supervisor David Engelbert?
Aye.
Supervisor Roy Engelbert?
Aye.
Supervisor Inigo?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Gunlickson?
Aye.
Supervisor Halsted?
Aye.
Supervisor Cook?
Aye.
Supervisor Leno?
Aye.
Supervisor Lundell?
Aye.
Supervisor Ninus?
Aye.
Supervisor Norton?
Aye.
Supervisor Robillard?
Aye.
Supervisor Heim Peter?
Aye.
Supervisor Verley?
Aye.
Supervisor Vlies Wadachek?
Aye.
Supervisor Waite?
Aye.
Supervisor Osted?
Aye.
Supervisor Bacon?
Aye.
Supervisor Boltman?
Aye.
Supervisor Chomo?
Aye.
That is passed on a vote of 20 yes, 1 excused. We're going to take a moment, and we're going to electronically roll call ourselves in. We appear to have this working.
Jill, you're such a good multitasker.
Oh, I mean, okay. Resolution 2019-64, approval of gift grant and/or donation to the Health and Human Services Department. Helen?
Hi, I would like to make a motion to accept the $150,000 grant from the state of Wisconsin, the Department of Children and Families, to our Health and Human Services Department. And this is a grant that will increase the services for our youth detention facility that we have here in the city, but it does serve the entire county. And I know that Joe was here. There he is. And I thought this would be a good opportunity for you to explain to everyone exactly why we have to do this and
I'll second that.
what we're doing, what we're doing with it.
So we don't actually have a detention facility. We have a youth connection center. It's a program that we started this year. The goal was to stop using detention centers as an alternative for kids who are getting into trouble. And so we developed a program that we're currently running 3 days per week. That program is having kids come in the afternoon into the early evenings. We're doing skills training. We're doing helping them with schoolwork, that kind of stuff. And again, our objective is to use less days of detention or kids in jail. That being said, in the midst of doing this, we also wrote a grant that we've received. This grant will allow us to expand those services to be daily instead of 3 days a week. But in order to do that, we also would need to bring in a physician. So we're requesting that we bring in a limited term till the end of December of next year with this grant funding. On page 35 of your packet is a budget that shows how we would intend to use that funding. The third column is the $150,000 and our intentions in using that. That's a rough estimate in terms of what we're looking at, and we'll send that to the state for approval. That has not been approved yet, although the money has been approved. We have to show them how we're going to spend it. I'm glad to answer any questions, but again, it's a program that we launched this year. Our plan is to continue to try and figure out, regardless of whether or not we got this grant, how do we expand those services and how to get better results with our kids than we've had over the last couple of years.
Any questions? Linda?
I really appreciate the outline of the numbers on page 35, so thank you for that.
Okay.
But we are making a commitment here for a full-time person or full-time staff, a location that's going to be full-time staffed, and the rent and the services that go along with that. But on page 32, the second to the last paragraph says we will likely have the opportunity to apply for funds in 2021 and
That's
going
correct.
forward. So once we make this commitment and, okay, fine and dandy for 2020, everything's paid for, but what about 21 and 22? And
That's a great question, and again, at least within our committee, they're aware that the intention was to continue to try and move this program forward. We have other ways that we can generate revenue, hopefully through this program. When I say hopefully, we haven't started attempting that yet, although that was kind of in our plan for near the end of this year and into next year. With that program, if it can't be sustainable, we'll have to figure out how to cut it back. Currently, we're running that program with no tax levy money going into it. So we receive funds called youth aids money, and that youth aids money can pay for various things. It pays for when we have a kid in Lincoln Hills. It pays for when we have a kid in a long-term placements. Those costs are really expensive. If we can keep those costs down, we can contain this and run the program with those monies and other revenue we can generate through some of our mental health services. So at this point, and in terms of the position itself, it would be, there's a term for it that Kelly would have to tell me. I don't remember what it's called, but it's similar to the diversion grant that we're currently running, which When we originally launched that, that program was, or that employee was brought in knowing that that position would end in December of this year unless we received the next year's grant funding or came up with another way to fund it. So I would say the same thing here. I believe if we can expand these services, we will keep the numbers of kids down in long-term placement. Now, we can't totally control that because we don't totally control what those behaviors are of those kids. But one child in Lincoln Hills costs us about $100,000 for the year. If we can keep 5 kids out, we can save that money and use it in a different way. So we're just adjusting how we would use our own funding.
And then I have to, again, referring to page 35, staff expense, 2 existing employees and 1 full-time with benefits added. So does that $135,512 include salary benefits of the 2 employees and the full-time?
Yes.
Okay.
Vinnie, did you have?
Oh, I think this is I'm excited for this program. I think it's a really great opportunity to do some, there is obviously already meaningful rehabilitation happening, but to keep it in the community as well and not have to send youth out of the community for those services. The cost effectiveness seems great. I really support it. My only question is, into the future, is just paying rent for a space, and I'm sure you've compared that, but over time, if this is something we want to commit to, just seeing what options might be out there to do something different with the rent and have a permanent space.
It's a great question and certainly something that we've been looking at. And as I proposed this to both Ken and our committee last year, we're kind of in a pilot phase at this point to see if it can be successful. Part of what we have already done is talked with the current facility that we're in, because we'll need more space and need to expand. But I agree, right now our rent is pretty reasonable. But we would have to continue to look at that if we were going to continue this program after next year.
Ellen?
I would just like to say that currently we've served like 14 kids, and they're from all over the county. It isn't just Sturgeon Bay kids. And as Linda mentioned, the really nice budget form. Would you like to give any shout out to anyone who's helped with this? This is the
yeah, I would say
this is an extremely complicated and confusing, and now it's just complicated. It's not confusing.
Yeah, Julie Benke, our business manager, put together the spreadsheet. And again, we've been using this same spreadsheet minus that 3rd column to estimate and put together and track our spending for this year. And we have breakdowns like this in all of the program areas we have. So Julie and Joanne Bauman in finance have been the ones to put this together.
Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the staff expense there, a couple years ago, we added a staff member to Soil and Water, and it was through a grant, and we considered that employee a limited term employee because it was just grant, but is this the same thing? It'll be an LTE?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's fine. I just think when we do that, that has a bad connotation. Maybe it's just me, but it's a full-time employee. I don't like it that we consider that limited term. Hey, we're all limited term. Yeah, everybody's limited term.
Right.
So,
The only thing I'd clarify is that when we do an LTE on some of those, we can control the benefits related to it a little bit tighter. So one of the concerns, for example, if we had one that's just a single-year position, you don't traditionally would give them the full benefits in terms of the 2 weeks vacation and all that, because, again, once they depart, we have to pay that part out. That's really the only difference, but everything else, yeah, they are, in essence, an employee. So.
all right, thank you.
I would add to that, as in the recruitment process, we want to be clear to people that this position may be gone, and for at least this particular one, we can hire in October, so it would be a 14-month position, but we want them to know coming in that if the funding isn't there in 2021, that the position will be gone.
Megan?
Thank you. I also just want to mention that while our purpose here is to keep a really keen eye on the fiscal hit, there is also the the preventative factor here. So when we're offering better service to folks in our community and keeping them possibly out of our system and being able to better rehabilitate them, we are saving money down the line. And that is something that we can't measure. So please just keep that in mind as well.
Biz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to give the board a little bit of history, I worked for the Sheriff Department for 30 years. I transported lots of kids to Lincoln Hills and lots of kids down to Manitowoc for the juvenile detention. As Joe outlined, it's very, very expensive at Lincoln Hills, up to $100,000 per kid. And I can tell you that often these kids came back and they were worse. And the reason they were worse is because they were mixed with the Milwaukee kids that were there, who were more sophisticated and better criminals. They taught our kids how to be a better criminal. So I'm all for this. This is good. If we can do it at home, it's a better deal than sending them off and mixing them with these other kids that are as bad or worse than they are, because they can come back even worse, plus the expense to send them out. So that's a little bit of history, you know. I can tell you that because I was there. John probably transported some too. And years ago, we tried everything we could to keep them away from Lincoln Hills because of the expense and the kids coming back. And sometimes they'd come back and bring a Milwaukee one with them, and then they'd start burglarizing everything again. So this is a real good deal.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, we'll go to the voter board. I'm sorry, John?
Yeah, I'm not opposed per se to keeping our children home and getting educated, and I have to agree with Biz on the Lincoln Hills issue. That never was a very good teaching atmosphere as far as I was concerned, from what I know about it. However, I think what perked my ears today was the possibility of expanding in the future, and are we looking at those possible costs? Are we looking at creating our own facility? We talked about the building that we currently have that we're renting, Joe. You had made the statement that we need more space, or we're going to need more space. What will that include? Are we talking about purchasing a facility to do that? Are we talking about going outside what the state is trying to do as far as starting new juvenile facilities throughout the state? Am I getting ahead of myself?
Yes. Yeah, so some of you may be aware, obviously John is, and some of you may not be. The state is looking to close Lincoln Hills and to go to regional facilities. We are not looking to do anything on the side of detention. So there will still be a need for detention facilities and correctional institutions like Lincoln Hills. Detention is more kids are going into a jail and spending time in juvenile pods in the jail. We're not looking to do any of that kind of expansion. So when we're talking about our programming that we're running during the week, we need space to do that. We currently have kind of one classroom, and we'd like to expand that to a couple. The facility that we're in, we're renting space in the old JC hall. And so we're going to expand the amount of space that we're going to rent, and we're going to plan to rent that over the next year. I see this as a program, and again, I appreciate that over the years you guys have given me leeway to try new things and expand programs. Our goal is to continue to provide better service here at home and not increase the tax levy need for those programs. So we'll continue to look at that, and if there becomes alternatives for better places to rent and or if we had to go to our own building, I'd bring that back. I don't foresee us wanting to buy a building to run this program, but I foresee us wanting to continue to expand how we use this with the resources that we have.
So this is like a daytime schooling situation?
Yep. Yeah, that's probably the simplest explanation of it. It's a daytime spot where kids who have been suspended or are on our juvenile delinquency rolls already are spending time with staff, and those staff are helping with classes, job experiences. Part of this grant will allow us to help kids get jobs where we can support some of the funding for those jobs so we can get them job experience. And again, our goal is to get these kids to be productive citizens and help them along that path. So there's classes on, personality, and we have AODA services in, mental health services in. We're providing educational support. We're providing job support, teaching cooking skills, all kinds of life skills that we're trying to help impart with this program.
And I can appreciate those very deeply, understanding what children go through in their homes and services that they don't get normally. My secondary question then, Joe, is maintenance of the facility. Who's in charge of that?
The place we rent from.
Okay, they take care of cleaning.
Yep, so we used some funding that we had to help them. We purchased a stove there for the cooking class and a refrigerator. But they did all of the remodel of the building to suit our needs, and they're responsible for the cleaning. We currently, the kids help clean the space that we're in.
I'm just trying to think of the outside factors that we as taxpayers pay, such as computers or computer setup, et cetera, and I'm sure we are paying some of those costs.
Sure, we used some of our youth aids money last year to do the setup, to buy the computers. We have some new additional computers in this particular grant, because we'll expand services and be able to provide with more kids at a time when we have 3 staff versus 2.
Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
Megan?
If community members would want to donate to this cause in the future or support it in the future, do we have a route for them to do so?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I mean, if they want to donate, they certainly could. We'd figure that out. We wouldn't, say no thanks. But I'd have to work with Steve and Ken on figuring out how that would work.
Dave?
Along the lines of Supervisor Cook's question, what other departments, every time somebody chooses to add a function to one of the committees or departments, it usually affects another department. What other departments might get affected by this addition that they have to start planning a little higher on what they're doing? Maintenance is one of the questions.
I would say maintenance, no, because we're renting the building, so they're not responsible for that. Potentially, TS set up the computers for us the first time, so they would, if we get some additional computers, we would need their help with some of that setup, the ordering and deciding what to do. We do that internally. I suppose certainly HR will have one more hire if this goes through. But outside of that, I don't see any impact on any other departments.
And have you gotten input on these time that might be involved by these other departments?
No, not yet. The grant hasn't been approved.
Thank you.
Laura?
Question, how long are we under contract to rent this facility to use it?
Currently just through this year, but we're currently having conversations with them to renegotiate that for expanded use and then the rent for next year.
Biz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Jason Rauer, he outlined for us on how much staff time they spent out there setting up these computers and fixing them so they can't get the porn sites and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't a lot of staff time, but there was staff time from his department to go out and set up the computers.
Vinnie?
I appreciate understanding the other departments that may contribute. I think in reverse, what you kind of already alluded to, and it's more unknown, but to keep in mind that there will be departments that have to do less because of this as well, if it's transportation or if it's officer duties or things that are going to be reduced because students aren't going to correctional facilities. So I think it's a good part to keep in mind too.
Ellen?
I was just going to say too, it's human services staff time, because currently Brown County doesn't have services that we use to avail ourselves of. And so we have contracts with Sheboygan County. We send kids to Wausau to their jails. So there is a lot of time involved in that, in staff time if there's any visiting. So it isn't just the Lincoln Hills, it's the actual jails. There's no shelter care in Brown County for us to use anymore, so we're very limited. So this is one of the things that Joe has done, is tried to bring it home, which is going to be a really big cost savings in travel time, et cetera. But also it is, you know, some of these kids may not be coming from the best homes, but it is their home. And to keep kids in the community and to be able to work not only with them, but maybe secondarily with their families, the kids can keep their connections with school, et cetera. And so it's kind of a diversion practice. These kids already are in the system, so to speak. So it is kind of our responsibility, and to be able to not have to send them to Wausau to serve jail time or something is to me just a huge savings. And I really thank Joe and Corey for putting this together and looking at serving more kids in the community, so.
John?
Just almost what Dave was talking about in TS is we keep a pretty close eye on the expenditures TS, or the time that TS puts in unplanned projects. Every time somebody adds a computer, it takes, you know, several hours of time on TS's time allotment for the day. It creates constant upkeep and maintenance and possibly licensing. There's an added expense to that, and I just need every board member to realize that TS is taxed by a lot of things that they do. And it doesn't come without a cost, and in the future, they're running tight. They're going to be asking for more personnel, and the more we add to it, the more we have to expect them to take care of the system itself. But I'm not trying to pick on Joel here. It would be with anybody that adds something to the county's information system, so just be aware of that, please.
Linda?
I've answered my own question, thank you.
Perfect. David?
And I'm not really specifically referring to TS, but in general, when in our review of TS's time and energy, these projects that may take 6 months, and that's for every department, that may take 6 months to finally come to fruition, it would be appreciated, I feel, based on the ones I've talked to be simply being aware of the project coming up, rather than all of a sudden, we have a 2-week window to get this work done, where they could have started to help plan their own departments. And I'm talking not just TS, but every department that has to interact with any change within this county.
Biz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It does involve some staff time on departments by keeping them here. But it's a savings for the sheriff department. Because if we ship them, that can involve overtime and stuff for the sheriff, because they transport these kids to all these other out-of-town facilities. So there, if they don't have to transport, well, then that department saves money.
Anybody else?
I don't know, but I know, would this qualify for having the nonprofit computer help that the ADRC is going to get? Or could we approach them? So there's even maybe some workarounds for the small amount of IT time that this would take.
Yeah, so we're shifting gears here. And again, from my perspective, we're doing a nonprofit to take care of the computers at the ADRC, because it was too much for TS to take on. And the original setup of this Youth Connections program, they set up Wi-Fi in the building, got that hooked up for us. There was a lot to it. And again, I was not aware or did not think that through before we launched it without talking to Jason first. And so we know that there will be some. And again, at this point, we found out about this last week. I haven't approached Jason with it yet. I meet with them monthly for these kind of projects to let them know when they're coming. But I'm not sure that this one would fit the nonprofit group.
Laura?
And since we're a little off topic, I make a comment that I think it's also the department heads, that if another department or committee refers something to them and it's not a planned project, they have to just tell them straight up, we have to plan for this. I don't have the staffing and the time for this right now. So kudos to everyone that has been working together. I think, thank you for all this information. And sitting on Human Services or Health and Human Services Board or any other boards, I will keep that in mind as a supervisor on how that affects other departments and make sure that we plan accordingly. So thanks, supervisors, for bringing that to all of our attention.
Okay, we will. Sorry, David.
I guess a little later comment here, but listening to what everyone's saying, and the program I'm sure is very good, but having just been at the WCA conference, the presentation from, I believe it was Walworth County, on how they're handling their debt and so forth. And they talked about new programs, and when something like this comes in, my understanding is they expect to see the numbers projected to the future of how they're actually going to pay for this, whether if there's savings, maybe it comes from within their budget, and if that funding ends, how it's to be handled a little more in-depth than what we've gotten today, so we get a better grasp of the idea that it's not going to add to the budget in the future. Or the levy, I should say.
We will go to the voter board.
It's working. I think we're ready to start.
It's faster.
I said, I didn't think we were going to get there.
That's passed on a vote of 20 yes.
I was beginning to wonder, but
Thank you. Resolution 2019-65 committee appointments. Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion we adopt resolution number 2019-65, appointments to committees, commissions, and boards.
For a second?
Second.
Thank you. As you can see, this is the redo of the appointments that Kathy Schultz, District 13, was on. There was also an additional Human Services Board appointment, and we shifted the chairmanship of the Finance to the Vice Chair, which was David Engelbert, and we also shifted Laura to Public Safety. And again, this is through April. Of course, in April, it'll all be up for grabs again, and we'll make changes moving forward. David?
Just a simple question. We have 6 months plus left before the election that goes through. Economic Development, why are we not appointing somebody to that position?
The Board of Economic Development is being
Structured.
restructured, and they're going to cut down the membership size, so we went from 2 positions to 1 position as a result. And they're doing that now, as opposed to...
We will not be losing representation on the board, right?
Correct.
Correct. There'll be 1 less person, but we still have representation, yes.
Thank you.
By voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We're going to, before we move to ordinances, we're going to take a 5-minute quick recess. We can come back in and have our special report from DCEDC. Okay, we're now back in session. Would like to invite Door County Economic Development Corporation for their presentation. Come on up, Jim. Good morning.
Morning.
good morning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it was a year ago, last July, that I was first introduced to the group. And one thing that Kathy Schultz said is we'd like to hear from DCEDC a little more often. I'm here and she's not here. But I do see her every once in a while in one of her coffee clatches over at McDonald's, and I told her we were going to be down here reporting what Team DCEDC is up to. So I'd like everyone to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Janet Proctor, and I am proud to be a part of Team DCEDC. I'm the administrative assistant, and I actually provide the glue that holds this team together.
She really does. She's so. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kelsey Fox. I am the Workforce Development Specialist at Team DCEDC. I am originally from Sturgeon Bay. I graduated from Sturgeon Bay High School in 2005, and I spent the last 14 years living and working in Milwaukee, and just about a month ago, I was fortunate enough to convince my husband to move back to Door County. So I'm excited and very grateful to be back and focusing on workforce development in the county.
Hey, good morning. I'm Tom Strong. My wife and I have owned property in Door County since 2011. We've been full-time residents since 2016, and in January of this year, became a member of Team DCEDC. So we are thrilled to be residents. Couldn't be happier to live here, and also I consider it a privilege and an honor to serve in this capacity.
Okay, thank you.
So I can tell you you've been very busy since last July, and Supervisor Bacon can tell you that because she sits on our board, as well as Administrator Pavick, who attends our meetings as well. We had some service issues at DCEDC, and we made a change by bringing in Janet. We helped address those service issues. There was not quick response, rapid response to people making inquiries at DCEDC. So it was important to have somebody that could provide that service. We had a lot of redundancy in what we did with our accounting and that sort of thing, unnecessary redundancy. And since we brought Tom Strong on to DCEDC as our operations manager, he's really helped us organize that so we can be a lot more efficient. I can tell you that for about the past 6 months, I've been holding back on the business development position too, taking that on personally, and getting that organized because there were some issues in that area. And Tom has been instrumental in helping us make sure that we meet all of our metrics in the business development area. And then definitely having a boomeranger with Kelsey coming back. She's got some fantastic ideas. She understands cutting edge marketing. She's bringing a lot of value to us. And she even brought one extra person along in the name of her husband too, so that's a net sum gain for Door County 01. I will tell you that what we do at DCEDC, everything that we do goes and has to go up to the mission sniff test. Does what we're doing help accomplish the mission? And that mission, as you can see, is about our dedication to improving the economic vitality for the county and its residents. As far as what we do, our vision, it's really about focusing on diversifying our economy, providing family-supporting jobs, employment for our youth. Kelsey will touch on youth apprenticeship in a little bit. Ensuring an overall healthy economic ecosystem, for people to live, and creating a positive environment for both business creation and retention. Tom?
Sure, so how do we make this happen? As a new student to economic development, one thing that immediately stood out to me is just how complex a lot of these challenges are. And so in order to make those a reality, we need to build relationships. We build those with the local community, the different entities, the county of Door, the various cities and villages around the county, and then also, of course, the educational establishments, NWTC, the local high schools. And then beyond that, we also establish relationships with the different regional and state programs, specifically WEDA does a great job at the state level for making sure that we have the resources that we need to implement solutions to the economic challenges that face our county. And how do we make that happen, or what does it take to make that happen? It takes investment. It takes investment from both private and public entities. Of course, the County of Door is one of our investors, as well as many of the municipalities around the county. And then also quite a few businesses, both big and small, also support our efforts. Now, some nonprofit organizations, you're typically donating without an expectation of return on your money. In our case, I think it's a very fair expectation that as a county board, when you're contributing to our efforts, that you have an expectation of seeing outcomes that impact all the residents of Door County.
I can tell you that it's, as a nonprofit, it's that combination of the public and private investment that exists to keep DCEDC operating on that mission statement is really key. It's certainly what people are looking for is everybody coming together to help us accomplish what we do. And there are several lanes that we focus upon. Entrepreneurial development, and we're going to touch on some of that work a little bit, and non-traditional finance that we use to help make projects go. Workforce development, candidly, 70% of what we're focused on right now is workforce development. We have more jobs available here in Door County than we have people to fill them. Companies have been forced to outsource as a result of the need for workforce development. I was on a plant floor this week with one of our companies, happens to be the industrial park. They've got multi-million-dollar machines that need to be running 3 shifts a day, that are only running 1 shift a day. I mean, these millions of dollars they spend for this equipment. So as a result, until we can identify and attract the labor force, they have to outsource those jobs elsewhere. That means going somewhere on the other side of the bay. So it actually harms the vitality of our community that we don't have that adequate labor force. Companies are forced to outsource. They certainly don't do it by choice as a matter of priority. helping with site selections is something that is really important. Helping entrepreneurs and existing businesses find good sites for their projects. What are gaps? What are things that we have to solve that are impacting our growth and sustainability? We'll touch on broadband just a bit. And then attraction marketing. Attraction marketing means attracting businesses that address retail gaps that we have, and it also means attracting people to our area. So along the lines of entrepreneurial services, I can tell you Team DCEDC and our partnership with the Small Business Development Center at UWGB engaged with 71 entrepreneurs over the last year, working with them on individual projects. Team DCEDC alone engaged over 200 entrepreneurs on various projects. Not all of them come to fruition, and you don't always know, how they, and then sometimes they end very differently than where they start. One of the things that we've just recently started working on is the collaboration on the Sister City Export Project. So there's a pending grant on that. I'm really excited, absolutely. Really excited to be working on that. That would create an opportunity for 6 Door County companies to export their goods to, I can never say the sister city's name. Thank you very much. But how do we help our companies grow? We help them find new markets. And so I think it's wonderful that we have that sister city, and I think that we've got, it's wonderful that we've got this collaboration to work together. John?
Well, communication is definitely the key. And every Sunday morning, you do receive an email blast that was started early last year, coming from our executive director. And our objective is we really want to connect the silos, herd the cat, make the individuals and companies aware of opportunities, and increase awareness of ideas being executed elsewhere that may solve local problems. And that's why we have the email blasts every week to you. Also, the Business Development Center is fantastic. It complements our business assistance services by providing a facility to establish industrial and office operations. Right now, we have 19 tenants, 8 industrial and 11 office. We have shared services, facilities, and equipment to support that new business during their incubation period. And we work closely with Wisconsin Small Business Development Center at UWGB. And in 2020, we are rebranding, and we are going to track new startups for Sturgeon Bay. And in January 20th, 2020, we are hosting Entrepreneur Training Program.
Getting that email blast out every week is important. Not every article, and it should be getting into every one of your mailboxes every week. Not every article may be of interest to you, but I can tell you that there's an intention. We generally always have somebody in mind when that stuff is coming together. Sometimes there are great ideas. I think this Sunday we're going to be talking about a city elsewhere in Wisconsin that's offering free Wi-Fi in a couple of their parks on a broadband, on a pilot project. It would be a nice idea if we could do some of that stuff here potentially. But just those sorts of things that can continue to enhance the vibrancy of our community. And a note on the Business Development Center is it will be going through a rebrand. We're working on that project right now. But my hat's off to Tom Strong. He has that incubator 100% full at this point in time. That always changes. You always have people graduating out. But I don't know how long it's been since that incubator's been full. But thanks to Tom for that work. Revolving loan funds, we have them. We've been deploying them. They weren't getting deployed for the past several years. And so we definitely have those opportunities. They are loan funds. They are not grants designed to help our companies grow. The Community Development Block Grant is ending, and there's good work being done on a collaboration that will be important to keep those funds continuing going forward into the future. For example, with the Sister City Export Program, if that helps people attract new markets, they might need more working capital, for example. So that's a great example of where we can deploy those funds. So there's been a great level of communication and collaboration between the parties to make that happen, and I'm certainly enthusiastic about where that's going.
Thank you, Jim. On the next few slides, I just want to briefly highlight some high-level numbers relating to Door County's labor force and population trends, and really zero in on some tactics that we can put into place to help battle the decline in not only population, but labor force as well. As you'll see on the slide, you'll notice a nearly 11% decline in Door County's labor force over the last 10 years, which equates to a decline of approximately 2,000 people leaving the workforce in the county. That's a problem. Over the last nearly 2 decades, the county and Sturgeon Bay have seen a steady decline in population, the county falling by 1.8% as a whole, and Sturgeon Bay declining by nearly 5%. Together, that decline equals roughly 830 people that have left the county. To put that into a tangible perspective, based on these numbers presented, roughly 50 people leave Door County each year. In conclusion, our objective with regards to workforce development is to attract the labor force needed today to sustain our local businesses, industry, and overall economy. Quite simply, without workforce, we don't work. And in order to help attract and retain workforce, we have programming and actions we're working to put in place, such as 8th grade career day, Inspire Door County, a youth apprenticeship partnership that will really start to ramp up this fall, which is very exciting. Alumni Door County Manufacturing Day, which is coming up next week, Friday, October 4th, and lastly, our workforce attraction website. Our workforce attraction website is livedoorcounty.org. That will launch December 10th, and that's a really awesome tool that will hopefully help to attract workforce to the area. The go live for the site is December 10th, as I mentioned. We're planning a soft launch in December, and then we're working towards a hard launch in spring to kind of capture more of that audience. We'll have a multi-channel marketing plan to ensure awareness of the campaign, hitting Door County markets as well as large metro markets in the surrounding areas.
Having Kelsey on board is a big deal when we launch Live Door County on December 10th. That Live Door County site is going to be a one-stop shop for all the jobs that are available in the county. So if you post on the DWD website, jobsindoorcounty.com, Indeed, Simply Hired, all those sites, we've contracted with an outside contractor to take all those, scrape them together, and put them into that one-stop shop. We'll also demonstrate places for you to live, give you some information on our school districts and on the communities throughout Door County. We need more people in Door County. We've got to turn the population trend around. We've got to turn those workforce numbers that are generally driven by demographics around. And Kelsey's skill with marketing will complement that too. So you can have a great website, but you've got to have cutting edge marketing to make sure that you're drawing them in. Working on site selection over the course of the last year, our industrial park in the city of Sturgeon Bay is just about full. The largest site that was still available is a 9-acre site, sat on the market. They wanted a lot of money for it, more than actually going rate. And Team DCEDC actually facilitated working with one of our largest employers, HACO, acquiring that site for planned expansion. We also did an outreach with property owners adjacent to the industrial park and to check on their interest in selling their properties. We did find one that, of course, I think they think there's uranium under there right now. So we have, working with the city has an option now to acquire that if that becomes available. And we're working with several companies right now on planned expansions and locations to the county. I mentioned broadband, and broadband's hard. I don't think these computers, I don't think these smartphones are going away. And so we have some things that are very difficult to solve, and we're working with several groups on solving those. But we also potentially have some self-inflicted barriers to growth along policy that I do think that we can solve. And so we're going to be coming back to you in very short order with some people that understand this a heck of a lot more than me, with some ideas to help improve that policy so that we can impact broadband more. Last fall, I had the privilege of doing some mock interviews with some seniors at Sebastopol High School. And 7 were on my schedule. Amazing, amazing kids. But one of the questions that I asked them that wasn't on the typical interview list was, how's broadband at home? Every one of those 7 students have deficiencies with broadband at home. So we can have fiber at the schools, but if we don't have good connectivity at these kids' homes, we're holding them back. So we're going to come back to you, as I said, with some wise people and some recommendations on how we can improve on that line. Kelsey? Oh, that's me, sorry. As far as attraction marketing, I already talked about what we're doing with workforce, but we've got some gaps here. We lost Shopko up in Sister Bay, and we must fulfill that gap. People coming from the island, Liberty Grove, and throughout northern Door County, are being forced for some of the things that they were able to get at Shopko. Now some of those things they can't get. So we're certainly actively working on solving that. We still have the Yonkers issue here. TJ Maxx is going to solve a part of that, but not all of that. So know that we're constantly engaged on finding solutions to those issues that we've got. And as I said, making sure that those RLF opportunities are out within our businesses throughout the county is key. The most recent one announced just a couple weeks ago is an expansion of a successful business. Healthy Way is moving on 3rd Avenue to the corner of 3rd and Oregon into a much larger facility. And I can tell you in economic development, you don't like empty buildings. And it's kind of hard to get from the west to the east in Sturgeon Bay, and if you're taking Oregon, you can't avoid very easily that building. So having that building under construction now and ultimately taking the successful entrepreneur with this loan, which is a very minor portion of the overall deal, is a big deal for growing our economy. Housing is something that we're very engaged in, and it's unfortunate. I did hear the one public speaker we had here today talk about housing, and I can tell you that it's one of the things that keeps Team DCEDC awake at night is solving this. So thank you for your collaboration on the housing study. It was important that we had specific numbers. Door County's had housing issues for decades, maybe since the beginning of time. But what we needed is specific numbers, exactly how much and what types of housing were needed. So when that housing study came back in February, we moved forward quickly to start deploying those metrics. February 4th, we had a press conference. Every TV station from Green Bay was there, radio was there from throughout Door County, and print media were there to report on the story. The following day, we had a housing symposium at the Crest Pavilion in Egg Harbor, bringing together all of the stakeholders, bringing together resources, coming up with suggestions and ideas to help solve that problem. Then we moved on to putting together a strong presentation to inform the public on what the specific challenges were and then what specific ideas were to solve that. So we moved from north to central to southern Door County doing public reports. Then we engaged the development community.
Sure. So on the heels of all the work to identify the housing issues and the housing needs was the Developer Summit that was focused this time around on Sturgeon Bay. So I take absolutely no credit on the execution of it. It was really Jim and the city officials and then other local officials that made this just an incredibly well executed event. And the way it played out is there were 12 to 13 developers here that had a chance to tour about 35 different properties within the city of Sturgeon Bay, and it was fun to watch the developers' reactions as they saw the different properties that are available. For some, their eyes lit up. For some, they couldn't have cared less. The bottom line is each developer has a different area of expertise, and this was a chance to showcase 35 properties in a matter of 2 hours as we took the tour around the trolley bus. So again, I take no personal credit. It was an event that I was happy to participate in. But based on the heels of that, or based on that blueprint, we have in our 2020 strat plan to basically follow that same model and present properties around the county to developers to attract their interest in developing here in Door County, specifically at developing attainable housing.
So when you're engaging developers, and we've engaged over 50 of them, working on all of the needs that we've got, we need senior owned and operated and apartment housing here in Door County. We need workforce housing. We need attainable housing. probably 10-to-1 ratio, more apartments to single-family home on the attainable side. But we've got, and then we need seasonal housing beds, of course, as well. The need of hundreds was identified in the housing study. And so the county doesn't build housing, municipalities don't build housing, the Economic Development Organization doesn't build housing, developers do. And so what Team DCEDC does is engage those developers, bring them ideas, also help them with non-traditional finance suggestions to help make the whole thing go. The West School project, I can tell you, I myself probably have, I don't meter it, but I've got to have over 200 hours on that project. The day that I got to Door County, I saw a historical building that was crying out for a rehabilitation project and restoration into a new life as something else. Its life as a school, you know, had been over 20 years ago. But that was an opportunity to do that. We went through a lot of developers. We worked very closely, in this case, with the city. But bringing that all together, we're very close to the finish line, potentially moving forward with it. This one is being proposed as an attainable housing project by a developer duo out of Oshkosh. I've been in their housing developments in Milwaukee, in Oconomowoc, in Appleton. I've seen what they can do with restoration firsthand, and I can tell you that this is something that everyone will be proud of if it moves forward and if we're fortunate enough to have it. This particular housing project would be a Section 42 housing project. Now, what is Section 42? You have to have a job. You get a credit, you have to take a credit check, you know, and a background check in order to qualify for it. Your housing cost is set at a percentage of Door County's median income, okay? And our median income here is roughly $54,000. So whatever that number is what it's set at. That means that one-bedroom apartments at the county's current CMI, it may change slightly over the next couple of years. One bedroom would range from $310 to $395. A three-bedroom apartment would be from $395 up to $850. So, you know, at $395 on a three-bedroom, we're talking families too. I received a letter recently, I won't read you the whole thing. They sent some along appreciation for the weekly updates that we do, but they talked about their daughter and her 4 children that happen to live in Sturgeon Bay were forced to leave because of lack of attainable housing. She took 4 kids out of the Sturgeon Bay School District. How do our schools get their funding? It depends on how many students that they've got in those schools. So we've had, Sturgeon Bay School District has had a 14% decline in their student population over the last 14 years. Sevastopol's down slightly. The island's down over 50%. So, I mean, we definitely have to make sure that we've got adequate housing, and the housing that people can afford so that they can actually raise families here. For our companies that are looking for labor force, they have to be able to afford that housing to move here. I can tell you that in this attainable housing development that's proposed here, a entry-level patrol officer would qualify for this. An entry-level school teacher would qualify for this. Somebody that would take a job and is an entry-level position for many of our manufacturing firms would qualify for attainable housing. So that's the sort of things that we're talking about here. They're hard. They're very, very worthwhile when they come. And the other neat thing about developers is that they rarely develop one project. Ultimately, when they put a project in there, it doesn't take twice as much time to manage 2 as it does 1. So it is very likely, I saw this quite often in the county where I served before coming to County of Door, is this developer will likely continue to develop here in Door County if we welcome them to do so. That's a lot to unpack. It's been a busy year, and you're getting kind of a 30,000-foot level of that. But, you know, with that, Team DCEDC would welcome any questions that you might have for us.
Linda.
You mentioned Section 42, the latest development there on the west side, would be Section 42 housing, but also on the slide was a bullet with senior housing. So can you And you also said that you must have a job or be employed for Section 42. So a development such as that proposed for the west side, would that be a combination of Section 42 with working families and also senior housing?
Yeah, seniors, that would qualify for Section 42 would certainly qualify for this. I don't believe this answers our senior housing need for apartments, but by any shot. But certainly they would qualify for this. One thing I failed to mention is that part of the Section 42 program is 20% of the units are reserved for veterans. And so, a lot of coasties, for example, come to Door County to retire. It's a great place to retire too, but they want to keep working. And so 8 of those units out of that development would be our plan to be reserved for veterans, and that's a requirement of Section 42. Benny?
I was wondering, as you mentioned, if you know this number, I don't know off the top of your head, but it would be interesting to know as the workforce the workforce has gone down 11% in over 10 years, how much has the number of jobs gone up, stayed the same, or gone down in 10 years as far as number of actual jobs?
Well,
how does that impact that other?
The employment numbers currently are lagging a little bit, but that's, so the employment is definitely following down, alongside with the labor force numbers. But when we did manufacturing days, our second annual manufacturing days last October, and we had that media blitz, we had 400 open jobs in Door County. So those are not seasonal jobs; those are over 400 full-time jobs. So our employment numbers are really lagging because we don't have the adequate labor force to fill the jobs. And we certainly want to continue to keep engaging Door County residents on those jobs, but we don't have enough of them. And so that's where the engagement is we've got to focus on engaging on recruiting more people up here. Be it a boomeranger, like what Kelsey is. It took 14 years. I don't want to wait that long, with everybody. But also just recruiting people that might not even know about Door County. And that's where Live Door County will really come in, is help us grow our labor force and employment numbers there.
And I guess I'm kind of commenting on that in a sense because it feels like we should maybe not focus on increasing the number of jobs we have as much as we should focus on workforce development. And I'm not saying that you are doing that, but as I see, like in my districts, more businesses opening and then having to close either part-time because they can't find workforce. It's an interesting thing if you bring in people who want to develop a business plan or an idea so they have an understanding that we're already really understaffed in many businesses in the county, which isn't maybe a positive message, but a realistic one to help them make their decisions about how much to grow.
So when you're in economic development,
Yeah.
It's definitely in your DNA to not work against job growth. But you're 100% correct, and I can tell you that automation is here. I mean, our companies are in fact investing a lot in automation so that they can do as much or more, knowing that they have fewer people. That's happening nationwide. So that's one thing. I will tell you that with our RLF funds, with the consolidated manual that we're putting together, one of our focuses, employment has fallen a little lower on the list, and we can change that anytime we want, the way we're proposing it. If we run into a different kind of job market in the future. But one of the goals for me is net new construction. We had $81 million in net new construction here in Door County. Not bad. It was nice growth here in Door County. The town of Egg Harbor had the highest percentage growth. The city of Sturgeon Bay was 1.0%, and that's not good enough. Why do we have 50-year roads, road turnovers in the city of Sturgeon Bay? Well, one of the things is we need more net new construction, and those housing projects in part will help solve that. So they've got to have places to live, I think, is what that really comes down to.
Yeah, great. Okay, wonderful, thanks. So to go echo that new construction, need it, definitely, keep our taxes down. To go off the workforce development on part of your slide, in the last year, we've been seeing a need in that for emergency and communications and dispatchers, and also EMRs. So public safety sectors, we're not the only county with that. And with that, I've had conversations with other people from other counties on what they're doing. So this went into the conversation for workforce development. And other counties have started shadowing days or mentoring with, say, sophomores in their high schools, and to get them actually come in, see these jobs, or government jobs and all around. because also government jobs, we're having troubles retaining and keeping, getting and keeping people into our government position. So with that, could you just elaborate a little bit more on this youth apprenticeship day? Have you heard of other counties doing these shadowing mentoring positions specifically, especially when we're hurting in certain areas, so we can keep them and show them what that even means?
I hope she doesn't feel put on the spot, but I'd like to get out of Kelsey's way and let her talk about that a little bit if she's willing to do that. It's a great question.
Yeah, great question. So to comment a little bit on the youth apprenticeship program, we're partnering with Anapee Anapee Regional Youth Apprenticeship, and what they had done is start this really in LC in their school districts, and they're up to 131 students, and it's really blown up. And we've met with a handful of the districts in Door County to try to get them on board. And really what this does is it helps place students into different career paths, whether that's manufacturing, government, hospitality, you name it, they will try to find, and they will find. Jen Johnson is a rock star, and she will find that kid a placement, and no matter what it is. She had talked a little bit about a kid who had come to her, and I think it was something to do with the zoo or something like that. And anyway, she had reached out to the Green Bay Zoo, and she'd found them a placement, and she's got kids in Bay Ship, and they have their own offices. How cool is that? I just got my own office. So I mean, they are doing really, really cool stuff. And the comment about the government workers is something that really kind of perked my attention a little bit. As I come to more of these meetings and talk to more people, I learn more about the areas that are kind of suffering this. So I think that's certainly something we could take back to the table, talk to Jen. And as we get youth apprenticeship kind of up and rolling in Door County with our schools here, that's certainly an area that we could look to get more kids in. And they start doing it with a job shadow day, to learn, is this really something that I want to do? And if it isn't, great. If it is, awesome. Let's get them into an apprenticeship program. Part of it is getting them into something they like to do. And if they discover that they don't like to do it, that's a huge win too. Yeah.
So I guess to go off of that twofold, especially if they are, first I'll kind of go backwards here with the apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
So if I guess I would just ask our department stuff if we need to start some kind of policy for that, if we're looking for these students to come into our government and have apprenticeship, then we should be looking at what our policy is for that. And I would just echo that for all of us on any departments, because I definitely think it's needed, especially in public safety, if we can offer that. But also, you said that going off of this Anapee Regional Johnson, they find a placement. So if I'm a student, I'm in high school, hey, I have this interest that I want to be a paramedic someday and ride on a rescue squad, et cetera. So that's my interest coming forward. But I also think we should be looking at it the other way, and I'm not sure if this is looking at it that way, is that, hey, as this lady that you said echoed as Johnson, she may look at somebody and say, I see there's potential to go to this position. That student may not even have a clue that they would be good at it or like that position unless they got a taste of it by doing a shadowing day. So I would like to also see it on twofolds, their interest, but also pushing people into directions that they would not even known they would loved it if they didn't have that chance to shadow.
Definitely. Great comment there too. And what Jen does, and what I will eventually be doing once she kind of trains me and brings me on board, is really she sits down with the students and she'll have one-on-one meetings with them, and she'll do a little bit of quote-unquote career coaching to help them kind of discover areas maybe that they didn't know existed, or maybe that they didn't know they might like. They could go in with, I want to be a nurse and that's it and that's all I want to do, but she kind of helps to open their eyes a little bit to opportunities that, to your point, that maybe they haven't thought about before. So she certainly does work from that angle as well.
Great. And you said that's going to be starting now? You're starting to work with schools. When do you think that's going to unfold and actually take place in another year or two?
No. Hopefully soon. I mean, we're really kind of getting the ball rolling. We're meeting with Gibraltar this afternoon in the island to kind of get them on board. We've met with Sturgeon Bay. Southern Door already is on board. So the ball is really certainly starting to move, and we're really hoping we can get kids placed into businesses soon. So it certainly would be within probably we should see stuff within the next 9 months to a year of really,
Great.
progress on the youth apprenticeship program. Hopefully sooner, certainly.
Great.
Yeah.
So we were on like a 3-year horizon on this thing. It'd take that long to get it ramped up, and then we looked at what Anapee was doing. I think Todd Thays, who's the vice chair, who's VPGM at Pinkenterry, vice chair on DCEDC, and he's looking at what's going on down at Luxembourg, Casco, and Kewanee, Anapee, and he's like, they're really growing that thing. So we met with them, and it shortened our runway from 3 years to 0. So we're actually inserting ourselves under NIP. I don't think that's been officially approved by DCEDC's board yet, but I think
On that.
our board chair is Patty Bickman, who's administrator at Southern Door Schools.
Right.
So and she's in Southern Door is already on board with this program. So Southern Door went from 2 students enrolled to 30 now interested. We've got 30 students that we can now place in Door County companies. And it's not limited to being on a manufacturing floor. We've got an accountant, actually, as a youth apprenticeship from Luxembourg, Casco, working at DCEDC right now, working with Tom. Sturgeon Bay, Dan Chernagel says, yep, we're on board. He's introduced it to his school board. I'm going to a school board meeting at Sevastopol tonight, which is a follow-up to a meeting Kelsey's already had there at St. Clemens of Peckergan.
You'll get over it.
But I'm going to be attending that along with Jen. And then, as Kelsey said, we've got Gibraltar and the island today. So we would love to have all 5 Door County school districts involved in this. There's a lot of flexibility in the program, and getting more people working with the county, I think, would be an awesome thing. The flexibility really makes it so, and the insurance is there. DWD has really added a lot more flexibility to the program.
Yeah. And then just another comment on that is, I didn't mean to leave out any other departments that need workforce for our government, but Human Health and Human Services. So you can please talk with that department head. I just have one other question too for the attraction and marketing. You said you do the Developers Summit. So that sounds amazing. It's every 2 hours. You have 35 or 12 to 13 developers seeing 35 properties. Going to do that annually, every 2 years? What? When do we see that coming back?
Well, and that was City of Sturgeon Bay.
Yeah.
So
Can we do that broader?
Absolutely. We certainly want to work with municipalities that want development, so we're just not going to show up. The bus isn't just going to show up someplace where we don't want development or something like that. So the key is to make sure that we've got communities throughout the county that are interested in development, and then we will definitely work on some regions in Door County. I'd love to have still done more of Door County yet this year, but we're kind of running into our strat plan right now, and so it's definitely going to have to be something we do in 2020. But yeah, we did it in the county where I served previously, and the city of Sheboygan alone has over 1,200 apartments either online or in the development platform that came through this sort of a concept. So you welcome them in, you make them feel welcome. It's important the municipalities collaborate with them. So it's really got to be where in the county development is welcome. And, not every acre in Door County wants to be developed.
Right.
And we only have infrastructure in so many places, so we're sensitive to that. But yes, there's more of that to come.
Wonderful. Thank you.
David?
One of the sessions at the Wisconsin Counties Association this week was a presentation by, one of the presenters was Troy Streckenbach from Brown County Executive on their digital efforts throughout the county. And he talked about how he was hoping it would be available and spread throughout northeast Wisconsin. And along with that was a little bit of touching on advancing Wisconsin, artificial intelligence. And they're reaching out to regions from Marinette to Waupaca to Manitowoc or even Sturgeon Bay. Sounded like potentially there's information coming here because they partner with NWTC and other businesses, and hopefully you know a lot more about it than I maybe do, but there's seminars at St. Norbert on it, I believe, and it's a whole new thing for the changing employment.
These companies are investing in all this stuff, and we've got to make sure that we've got the labor force there to be able to keep it up and running. And so that's where Tom mentioned, I think it was Tom that mentioned the Business Development Center. I apologize, it was Janet. We're going to be going through some rebranding with the Business Development Center because it's 25 years old and it looks 25 years old. And so we definitely, in order to attract the people that want to play in AI, we definitely have to get to that level and match that. So we've been down a couple times to look at what was Advance, is now the Startup Hub down in Green Bay, and we're definitely looking at bringing some of that mojo up. And you mentioned NWTC. They're such an asset to us here in Door County. I mean, we've got 2 locations here in Door County, and so that's an important alignment. They sit on our board, and so we're definitely working with that alignment to make sure that we're on the cutting edge. And some of this is just really taking our students in our 5 school districts and connecting them with it too.
Because that artificial intelligence is replacing so many jobs, and it's just,
It is, but
It's
it
changing
has
so
to,
rapidly.
but it also, there's arguments saying that it actually creates more jobs over time because you got to keep all that stuff
but they're
running.
different jobs.
And so we just want to make sure, Team DCDC really wants to make sure that we're on the cutting edge of this stuff and making sure we don't fall behind. But remember when we come back and talk about broadband, because so much of this is dependent on that, and some of this we've actually done to ourselves. We can fix it. I think we can fix some of the stuff, but just bear that in mind, going forward a month or so.
Not beginning to understand how Streckenbach suggested it, but he said they're reaching out with fiber because he thinks broadband's going to be too long and bringing it out to the rural regions. So if they can get it to a site in partnership with businesses and others, the county or whoever might need only a small portion of that fiber.
Yeah,
But
that investment that we had in fiber was a big deal when Insight Cellcom, did that, but we've got to build upon that framework. And the collaboration that we're doing with NWTC right now, I think, is really providing some of that. Some of our geology is going to cause, we're not going to do fiber in every household like they're doing in Chattanooga, where they're a gig community. Just geology won't allow for that. Some of this is going to come from over the air, but we can fix some of the challenges that we've got just by correcting or improving policy at the county level.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Washington Island schools are getting less and less pupils. That's on you, buddy.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the part of the agenda where it becomes the Mr. Fisher show.
I mean, the degrees.
Go, Mr. Fisher.
In other words, we're on
Chairman.
the big denial recommendation.
But I'm part of the point.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the report to the Door County Board of Supervisors.
Excuse me.
Are we ready now?
Would you start again, please?
Oh, I certainly. I'd make a motion to accept the report to the Door County Board of Supervisors, amendment to the zoning map of Sevastopol. It was a denial, and Mariah and I, and you talked about that when we took our break, because it's so seldom that we have a denial, didn't know exactly how to present it. But it's only a report. Mariah, are you there to?
May we have a motion? We don't have a
Second.
second. Thank you.
Second, okay.
Second.
Hello again. I think, Grant, were you going to read them the statutory options, and then I can answer any questions about the actual hearing?
Sure, very briefly. If you approve the report, in effect, you are denying the petition for amendment. The county board may also refuse to deny the petition, in which case the county board then must refer the matter back to the RPC with directions to draft an ordinance to effectuate the petition and report the ordinance back to the county board, which may then enact or reject the ordinance. If that makes sense. So you have 2 options.
But okay.
If you don't like it,
You deny the petition for amendment as proposed, or you refuse to deny it.
in which case we have to go back and write a new one.
It goes back.
Well, this is only the report. We're just asking to accept the report.
Well, no, that's where it gets
On a
confusing.
denial, this is the whole ball of wax.
That's it,
Yeah.
okay,
This is
all right.
it.
So,
And
So
it-
just to clarify, I have a question real quick. So if we approve this report, they cannot come back for an appeal?
Correct. I mean, they can come back in 6 months and request another rezoning hearing before the RPC, but if you approve this report, you're denying their request to rezone their property. They would have the right to come back in 6 months to petition again.
You're basically accepting the recommendation of RPC, which is to
Deny.
deny this petition.
Correct.
So if that's clear as mud to everybody, this will be a voice vote. If the
No, it's a
aye,
roll call, isn't it?
It's not an ordinance.
no, it's not an
Okay,
ordinance.
it's just, sorry. It says roll call on the thing.
So an aye vote would deny the request. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
took longer to discuss the ways to deal with it.
Report amendment to zoning map of Clay Banks, Renard zoning. Mr. Fisher.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the report on the Renard rezoning.
Second.
Mariah?
So I'm sure you're all familiar with the Renard's property where their store is, not the one on 57, but the one on, where is that? Is that S? So that property has been zoned agriculturally for quite a long time, even though there's been a retail use and essentially a manufacturing use there. So the purpose of this rezoning is to take two small pieces of that 38-acre parcel. The part with the store would get rezoned to commercial. The part with the manufacturing part for the cheese processing would get rezoned from exclusive agriculture to Heartland 3.5. That would make both of those uses conforming, which would give them more flexibility as far as expansion. And then the plan is for them to create a land division where that entire 3.5 acres that contains the manufacturing and the store to be separated off from the agricultural part of the property.
Any questions on the report? Or
I would like to comment on the zoning maps. Just for future reference, it'd be nice to have roads or landmarks on what maps we are looking at here and in relationship. There's just abbreviations, but no roads or where this is located. So for future, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
I can talk to Tom about the roads. All the abbreviations for the zoning districts should have been in the ordinance, but I can check.
Okay, any other? John?
Mariah, does the town of Clay Banks have some restriction at 35 acres that has to remain agriculture in their town?
That's what that exclusive agricultural district is. So that what shows up as brown on your map where there's the EA, that's, they've had that since 1984 for most of their town. And yes, that's why they can only split off about a 3.5 acre piece.
This doesn't affect that at all. This
No.
just cleans up.
This is cleaning up one property. So right now, that whole lot that the Renards own is zoned exclusive agriculture, which doesn't allow for retail or for the cheese manufacturing. So in order to make those uses conforming with the zoning ordinance and to be able to split it off and keep a 35-acre parcel, this is what would need to happen.
Anybody else? On a voice vote to accept the report, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 2019-09, amendment to the zoning map of Clay Banks.
Now make a
Renard
motion.
rezoning.
Now make a motion to adopt the amendatory zoning ordinance 2019-09, amendment to the zoning map of Clay Banks.
Second.
Any additional information, questions, or comments? Since this is, Randy?
Did the town board have any input on this?
They were
They were in favor of it.
They were in favor. Originally, the Renards petitioned to rezone that entire 3.5 acres to light industrial, or I'm sorry, the part that's going from exclusive agriculture to Heartland to light industrial, and some of the neighbors got nervous about that, so then the Renards changed their request to Heartland, which still allows for the manufacturing, and then everybody was fine with it.
Anybody else? Since this is an ordinance, we will go to our voter board then. And it's passed on a vote of 20 yes and 1 excused.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to accept the report of the Door County Board of Supervisors, amendment to the zoning map of Sevastopol.
Second.
Explanation?
So this is a property owned by the Lovensteins, which is 2 doors up from where Grandma Tommy's is. Right now, there's a single-family home there. They're wishing to convert that to, I believe, a professional office. This rezoning would allow that, and one of the other things that they're doing, which I think is kind of an added perk, is they'll be eliminating at least one driveway between all of these properties, so the access for 3 different properties will come off of one driveway, which is nice because that's turning into a fairly commercial stretch right now.
Any questions? If not, on a voice vote to accept the report, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
And then, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt the amendatory zoning ordinance 2019-10, amendment to the zoning map of Sevastopol.
Second.
Any questions? Linda?
I can just say that the Town of Sebastopol Plan Commission and the town board unanimously supports this zoning amendment.
Anybody else? Since it's an ordinance, we will go to the voter board, please. David? That is passed on a vote of 20 yes, 1 excused.
And then I would make a motion to accept the report to the Door County Board of Supervisors for amendment to the zoning map of Liberty Grove.
Second.
All right, this one is on Settlement Road, so kind of near the intersection of Settlement and 57. It's a property that's been used in a similar manner for quite some time. When the current owners bought it and moved their home business there, they didn't realize that it wasn't actually zoned for that to be able to expand. Their wish is to expand their trade and contractor business. So that's why they're petitioning to rezone. And the town of Liberty Grove was in favor.
Questions, comments? On a voice vote to accept the report, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I would make a motion to adopt the amendatory zoning ordinance 2019-11, amendment to the zoning map of Liberty Grove.
Second.
Questions or comments? We'll go to the voter board, please. That's passed on the vote of 20 yes, 1 excused. Item 14, new business, none. Item 15, anybody have any oral committee reports they'd like to report? Helen?
I would just like to report that we have joined the boards of Public Health and Human Services into one board, and we'll kind of continue to meet on that together. And also, we have a request from both Dr. Jim Hayes, who is the medical director at the hospital, and Krista Krause, who is the head of nursing at the Door County Medical Center, to remain on the boards. And I can't think of how many years ago it has been that we have active medical people who are really excited about sitting on the Human Services Public Health Board, which is very exciting because I think there's a lot of good information that's going to go back and forth that way.
Great.
That's a big thing. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Dave, can I say something?
Yes, please.
So just 2 points, just want to make sure, because I didn't summarize that, but the boards will be officially merged in April. They'll be meeting jointly between now and April, but there'll be something that'll come back because we have to amend our rules of order, our rules of operation in terms of our boards and committees, so I just want to clarify that. Just the one thing I just wanted to point out, I know a lot of the members did attend the conference, and you heard some comments today to some stuff that we learned at the conference, but the one thing I just wanted to, I thought was very interesting in attending some of the sessions, so I actually went through the agenda just again last night, and I have almost 12 or 13 sessions that either I popped my head into or attended. And it's just one of those things where I think we should pat ourselves in the back once in a while. I think this is one of those cases, because out of those sessions, a lot of those we have actually either are implementing or have actually accomplished some of those things that have been presented. And it's just one of those things where you take a step back and it's like, hey, we're doing some really neat stuff, and I think we need to commend our department heads, but also you as the committee members overseeing that we are doing some really neat work in Door County. And sometimes I think, at least myself, you always continue to do the grind, but you don't take a step back to reflect on your accomplishments. And I think this conference kind of highlighted that for me. I don't know if you felt some of the other members that attended, but I just wanted to point that out because I think the department heads deserve some kudos on that, but also the oversight committees need some kudos on that as well in terms of the things that we're doing here in Door County. And I think it's important that the residents know that we are doing a lot of things that were presented at the conference as cutting edge or new things, and we've been doing some of these things for several years now. So I thought it was just a nice reflection from the conference from my standpoint.
I want to also mention Vinnie was nice enough to put together all of her notes from the conference pieces that she went to and sent them out to everybody. So if you didn't attend, you can take a chance and open up. There's what, 5, 6, 7 pages of notes that you
Maybe
did?
5. I just sent them to you. I don't know how you want to disperse it if you do, but just in response to what people get from conferences, I tried to do that for anybody who couldn't attend or didn't attend those sessions, so.
We will see that they're distributed to everybody.
Thank you, Vinnie.
Okay.
Any review of committee minutes? Vouchers, claims, or bills? Announcements, the next regular county board meeting, October 29th at 9 a.m. I don't know if everybody got this or not, but you should be prepared if you would like to get your annual flu shot prior to that. And you should have also received the new updated supervisor list with Alexis on it.
I did not receive that.
No.
No.
It's coming. It's coming.
We didn't want to jinx anything, so.
They're coming with snail mail.
I didn't want to.
What if she turned us down?
Just one other announcement that you're invited. This time of the year, we usually try to do an employee appreciation lunch. So on October 10th, we'll be doing lunch at the Justice Center, usually for that building. And then that's a Thursday, and then on Friday, October 11th, we'll be doing the Government Center. And the theme this year, Jill, is our fiesta. So we're going to be doing tacos and all the related items for that. But anyways, you're more than welcome to attend. And again, it's one of those things is to show the appreciation to the employees for the year and all of our accomplishments. So you're more than welcome to attend.
What, excuse me, what are the two dates?
October 10th, which is a Thursday, and October 11th, which is a Friday.
Thank you.
Yes, well, I know people show up a little early, but we usually try to target for noon. So, Jill's still working on the games.
The meeting per diem code is 926. Mr. Fisher.
That being said, Mr. Chairman, if there's no further business to be transacted, I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
I'd like to talk about bear hunting a little bit.
Yes, yes.
Let it go, let it go.
We have a motion and
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Nice touch.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Wow.